That spiral you're in, that's not pain. That's potential energy. The kind of raw, volatile power that has moved empires, burned bridges, and reshaped entire identities. The moment she ignores you, she gives you a gift. A psychological trigger, not to chase her, but to awaken something ancient inside of you. Because obsession is never born from need. It's born from absence mixed with power. From someone who was supposed to shatter, but instead transformed. You don't win her back by messaging, begging, performing. That's desperation. And desperation smells. It reeks of weakness. What she ignored wasn't you. It was the version of you that forgot his center. Now watch carefully, and because this isn't just attraction, this is psychological warfare, cloaked in silence and forged in shadow. The first move? You vanish, but not like a ghost and like a threat. Like the moment before a storm. You withdraw your attention so completely, it burns a hole in her universe. She has to feel the void. Let the echo of your absence shake her more than your presence ever did. Then in the silence you evolve. Physically, mentally, socially, spiritually. You become harder, sharper. You do not become a better man for her. You become a dangerous man in spite of her. That's what creates the obsession. The paradox. She sees you, the same man she ignored, rising in power, becoming untouchable, admired by others, desired by those who see what she missed. Her mind starts to whisper, "What did I lose?" That whisper grows. It's no longer curiosity. It's regret. Regret mixed with primal confusion. Because deep down, the feminine psyche isn't drawn to weakness or explanation. It is drawn to mystery, to strength that doesn't need validation. When you walk with silence in your chest and fire in your eyes, you become the thing she can't predict. And humans are obsessed with what they can't control. But here's the darkest truth. By the time she obsesses, you may no longer care, because this path, it doesn't lead back to her. It leads beyond her, into a version of you that no longer craves her presence, because you've met the one person who matters more, the version of you that was forged in the crucible of being ignored. Most men chase. It starts in a way that most men overlook. Subtle. Quiet, almost unnoticeable. She takes longer to respond. Her laughter becomes reserved. Her eyes don't hold you the way they once did. And then one day, her presence fades altogether. You feel it before you see it. The cold withdrawal, the disconnect. She's not mad. She's not dramatic. She's just gone. Emotionally, mentally, energetically. The silence is louder than any argument, and in that moment your instinct screams to react, to call, to explain, to fix it. Because society taught you that a man proves his worth by pursuit, that if something breaks, a real man chases, apologizes, performs. But let me tell you a darker truth. The more you chase, the further she runs. The more you try to pull her back, the more she'll convince herself that leaving was the right decision. You don't chase, you don't explain, you don't react. You become the storm. This isn't about manipulation. This isn't about playing games. This is about psychological transformation, because what she just triggered in you, the feeling of being ignored, is the beginning of one of the most powerful metamorphoses a man can undergo. But only if you allow yourself to enter the fire. The storm isn't about violence. It's not about destruction. It's about power. Controlled, silent, unrelenting power. The kind that doesn't beg. The kind that doesn't need approval. The kind that walks away not to hurt, but to evolve. You see, when a woman ignores you, she's subconsciously testing for polarity. Testing whether the man she once looked up to is still centered, still rooted in himself, or if he'll collapse under pressure, seeking validation, breaking down, needing closure. If you break, the test confirms her decision. He's not who I thought he was. But if you hold, if you fall back into yourself instead of forward into her, something shifts. She expected weakness. You showed her distance. She expected pleading. You gave her silence. This silence isn't passive. It's not empty. It's filled with the echoes of your focus, your grind, your discipline, your reawakening. You cut communication not to punish her, but to return to you. Every second you would have wasted refreshing her profile, checking her last scene, rereading her old messages. You redirect that into your evolution. You get in shape. Not because she left, but because your body is a reflection of your discipline. You get on your grind, not to show her your success, but because your mission is bigger than her opinion. You surround yourself with women who see your value, friends who challenge your potential, a world that responds to your new energy. And suddenly, her silence doesn't hurt anymore. It confuses her, because when she ignored you, she thought she was sending a message. You're not good enough, but your reaction sent one back. I never needed your validation to become a god. And here's where the psychological shift begins to twist. While you're evolving in the shadows, she starts to feel the absence. Not just of your presence, but of your attention, your energy, the very thing she thought she could take for granted. People don't value what's always available. They crave what's scarce, what's elusive, what slipped through their fingers before they understood its worth. When you become the storm, your presence becomes weather, something she can no longer predict, no longer own, no longer access. You stop being the sun she ignored and become the lightning she can't look away from. She starts checking your stories, asking about you, wondering if you moved on. Obsession doesn't come from knowing, it comes from not knowing. From the questions that haunt the quiet, from the mystery that replaces comfort. And yet, and this is where most men fail, you don't give her that old version of you back. You don't return with open arms, seeking closure or offering comfort, because you're not that man anymore. That man died the moment you embraced the storm. What remains now is a version of you that commands respect, that doesn't flinch at rejection, that uses pain as fuel, not a cage. This isn't revenge. It's rebirth. It's not about punishing her. It's about never allowing her to think she was your only source of light. And while she replays memories in her head, wondering where she lost you, watching as the world now watches you, you remain silent. Not cold, just elevated, out of reach, because that's what happens when a storm passes. It doesn't explain where it went. It just leaves a mark. Imagine this. You're standing in a crowded room, but suddenly the person you thought was your center turns away without a word. No explanations, no fights, just silence. She's pulled her attention like a shadow retreating into darkness, leaving you grasping at the void. Your mind races with questions. Your heart pounds in confusion. Why did she disappear? What did you do wrong? But the truth is, none of that matters now. Because the power lies not in the chase, but in the vanish. Vanishing is an art, a psychological strategy that transcends manipulation and enters the realm of primal human nature. When a woman ignores you, the natural impulse is to fill the silence, to reach out, to explain, to reclaim what slipped away. But silence is a weapon, a force of nature that few understand how to wield. When you vanish properly, you transform from a man desperate for attention into an enigma she can't stop thinking about. Why? Because human beings are wired to fill gaps. Our brains hate uncertainty. When you suddenly disappear, you leave an empty space in her reality, a space she cannot ignore. The absence of your presence triggers a psychological hunger, a craving to know, to understand, to possess what was once close and now feels distant. This hunger, if you wield the art of vanishing well, turns into obsession. But vanishing is not the same as running away or ghosting. It's a controlled retreat, a deliberate withdrawal that is fueled by self-mastery, not fear or insecurity. You don't vanish because you feel rejected. You vanish because you understand your worth independent of her attention. You step back not to beg for her return, but to reclaim your own life, energy, and identity. This requires a radical shift in mindset. The moment she ignores you, you must grasp that her silence is not your failure. It is your invitation to ascend. She is testing whether you are anchored in yourself or if you will crumble like a house of cards. When you choose vanishing, you choose to become the pillar of your own existence. Your life becomes fuller, richer, and more magnetic, not despite her absence, but because of it. The first step in mastering the art of vanishing is absolute detachment. This isn't emotional coldness. It's emotional sovereignty. You refuse to invest your energy in chasing something that has withdrawn. You stop scrolling through her social media, analyzing every missed text or hoping for a sign. Instead, you redirect that energy inward, toward your passions, your goals, your growth. Physical transformation is one of the most potent weapons in this silent game. When you disappear, you re-emerge with a new body, a new energy. You become stronger, leaner, more confident, not to impress her, but to embody the version of yourself she thought she could dismiss. Every drop of sweat in the gym, every step you take in personal development becomes a message sent without words. I am not waiting. I am rising. But the art of vanishing is as much mental as it is physical. It's about cultivating mystery. The more she knows, the less she craves. When you disappear, you become an unread book with pages she desperately wants to turn. This mystery forces her mind into overdrive, filling the silence with fantasies, questions, and ultimately obsession. What is he doing? Who is he with? Why is he not chasing me? This is the paradox of absence. It's not what you say or do, but what you withhold that builds intrigue. You don't call. You don't message. You don't seek validation. Instead, you live fully and loudly in your absence. You engage with the world, laugh with friends, succeed in your endeavors, all while remaining untouchable, unseen, yet palpably present in her subconscious. This creates a psychological tension that she can't resolve without you. And the more tension, the stronger the obsession. Because the female psyche is not attracted to availability, it's attracted to challenge, to the man who doesn't give himself away freely. When you master vanishing, you become the prize that she thought she lost, and suddenly can't live without. Yet mastery demands discipline. The temptation to break the silence, to send that one text to check if she's reached out, is immense. But every moment you resist, you reinforce your power. Every day you stay silent. You build a fortress around your identity that no rejection can breach. You become a storm she can no longer command, a force beyond her control. At the heart of the art of vanishing is the understanding that your worth is not tied to her recognition. The moment she ignores you is the moment you stop seeking her approval and start demanding it from yourself. This internal shift from external validation to self-validation is what transforms a man from prey into predator, from boy into king. Her rejection, then, becomes the soil in which your obsession grows, not for her but for your own greatness. As you vanish, you reclaim your time, your energy, your life. You don't disappear out of spite or sorrow. You disappear to become more than she ever imagined. Because when you return, if you ever do, you do so from a place of power, not need. Vanishing is the silent roar that echoes louder than any plea. It's the void that she cannot fill with distractions or new attention. It's the darkness where your true self is forged, the version of you that no longer fears loss, because it knows it has already won within itself. And as she watches from the sidelines, caught between regret and fascination, caught in the grip of her own unresolved emotions, the art of vanishing reveals its cruel beauty. Sometimes the best way to be found is to disappear entirely. There is a darkness that lurks within every man, a deep well of untapped power, raw and primal, waiting for the right spark to ignite it. When a woman ignores you, she does not just withdraw her attention. She unknowingly stirs this dark force within you. This force is not fueled by anger or desperation, but by a shadowy kind of self-possession that many men never learn to embrace. It is the power to become unforgettable, not by trying harder, but by transforming into something she cannot ignore. No matter how much she tries, to awaken this force, you must first understand the psychology behind being ignored. When she turns away, the immediate feeling is rejection, which triggers an emotional fracture. This fracture, if left unhealed, leads to weakness, but if harnessed correctly, it becomes the crucible for transformation. The dark force is born in that fracture, the space where pain meets power, where absence breeds obsession. This is not about making her obsessed by bending to her will or manipulating her emotions. It is about awakening an internal magnetism that naturally pulls her and everyone else into your orbit. This force is the result of deep self-mastery, relentless confidence, and an aura of mystery that captivates on a subconscious level. Begin by relinquishing the need for her approval. This is the first and most painful step. When a man is ignored, his ego screams for recognition, for explanation, for validation. But to awaken the dark force, you must turn inward, not outward. You do not seek her light. You become your own. Her rejection is no longer a wound, but a signal, a challenge to ascend. The darkness within you thrives on independence. It feeds on the refusal to be diminished by silence. Instead of begging for attention, you embrace solitude and let it sharpen your edge. Solitude is the blacksmith's forge where this force is shaped. In the quiet moments when no one is watching, when the world forgets you, you build the inner strength that no external circumstance can shatter. Physically, this transformation is reflected in your presence. The dark force manifests in posture, in the way you move through space with a quiet, almost dangerous confidence. It's in the calmness of your gaze, the steadiness of your voice, the measured way you engage with the world. When you embody this energy, people notice, not because you seek their attention, but because your energy demands it. Mentally, awakening this force means mastering your thoughts and emotions. The ignored man's mind is a battlefield of doubt and longing. The man who awakens the dark force turns that battlefield into a throne room of clarity and control. He does not ruminate on what she did or didn't do. He focuses on what he can control, his mindset, his actions, his growth. This internal dominion is what makes you unforgettable. Because true magnetism is not about being loud or flashy. It's about having a presence so solid, so unapologetically real, that others are drawn in like moths to a flame. And this flame burns brightest when kindled by adversity, when stoked by the silence of someone who once mattered. But there is an even deeper layer to this dark force, the embrace of paradox. To become unforgettable, you must embody contradiction. You are both the calm and the storm, the seen and the unseen, the approachable and the untouchable. You cultivate mystery by not revealing everything at once. You allow parts of yourself to remain hidden, compelling her curiosity and stirring a restless need to know more. This paradox also plays out emotionally. You are capable of warmth, but you withhold it selectively. You show interest but never neediness. You engage but never cling. This delicate balance unsettles her psyche because it defies her expectations. She thought she had you figured out. But now you are an enigma, complex, layered, impossible to categorize. To awaken this dark force is also to accept your shadow, the parts of yourself that society often teaches you to hide, your raw desires, your imperfections, your capacity for intensity. When you integrate these aspects instead of suppressing them, you radiate authenticity. And authenticity is magnetic in its most primal form. It cuts through superficiality and connects on a level that words cannot reach. At the core of this force lies the principle of irresistible authenticity. She may ignore you now, but she cannot forget you once you step fully into this power. Your energy imprints on her subconscious, like a haunting melody she can't stop humming. It is not about control. It is about embodying a presence so compelling that obsession becomes a natural byproduct. This transformation requires patience and resilience. It is not an overnight change, but a gradual awakening. You must be willing to sit with discomfort, to face the void of her absence without flinching, to walk through the shadowy parts of your own psyche that fear rejection and loneliness. Yet within that darkness lies immense freedom. Freedom from dependency, from fear, from the endless need for external approval. When you awaken this force, you are no longer a victim of her indifference. Instead, you become a force of nature, untamed, unforgettable, unstoppable. This dark force is also a form of silent rebellion. It defies the cultural narrative that a man's worth is measured by the attention he receives from women. It rewrites the story. A man's worth is measured by the depth of his character, the strength of his spirit, and the magnitude of his presence. When she ignored you, she set a fire inside you. Not the fire of anger or desperation, but the fire of transformation. This fire burns away the old, weak version of yourself and reveals the man you were always meant to be. The man who doesn't need to be seen to be powerful. The man whose energy lingers long after he's gone. And so, the dark force awakens. Not through force, but through surrender. Not through chasing, but through becoming. Not through pleading, but through embodying a presence that she cannot help but obsess over, even in her silence. When a woman ignores you, it feels like falling into an abyss, a sudden void where your presence once existed. You become a ghost in her world, unseen, unheard, forgotten. But from this ghostly exile, you have the potential to rise not as a desperate shadow begging for light, but as something godlike, a presence so commanding, so magnetic, that she cannot help but feel the pull of your absence like gravity itself. The psychology behind transforming from ghosted to godlike is profound. It begins with the fundamental understanding that obsession isn't manufactured by frantic attention or needy behavior. It's forged in the crucible of absence, mystery, and elevated self-worth. When she ignores you, she's not just withdrawing from your company, she's testing your core, your identity. She's asking silently, "Who are you when I'm not looking?" Most men answer this question with panic, flooding her inbox, begging for answers, or worse, trying to justify their value. But a godlike man answers differently. He steps into the void and owns it. For instead of shrinking, he expands. Instead of pleading, he radiates indifference wrapped in unshakable confidence. This is the essence of psychological power, the ability to remain so rooted in yourself that her absence only amplifies your presence. First, understand that the feeling of being ghosted triggers the primal human fear of abandonment and insignificance. This fear is ancient and runs deep in our neurobiology, but the godlike man rewires this fear into fuel. He converts vulnerability into strength. He no longer identifies with the pain of rejection. Instead, he embodies resilience. His psyche becomes a fortress, impervious to the winds of indifference. To embody this godlike presence, you must cultivate what psychologists call secure attachment with yourself. This means you don't depend on external validation to feel worthy. You own your value regardless of her attention or absence. When you internalize this, your behavior shifts radically. You no longer chase what's lost. You create what's powerful. One of the most potent psychological tools in this transformation is the deliberate cultivation of scarcity. When she ignores you, your first impulse might be to flood her with messages or desperately seek her attention. But scarcity, withholding your presence and attention, triggers a neurological craving. The brain releases dopamine in anticipation of a reward that seems just out of reach. You become that reward, the prize she is wired to pursue because it's scarce, elusive, and unattainable by ordinary means. This scarcity must be paired with quality. It's not just about disappearing and hoping she notices. It's about what you do during your absence. This is where you become godlike. You channel your energy into self-improvement, mastery, and passion. You rebuild your life with purpose and power. The man she ignored transforms into a man who commands rooms, conquers challenges, and lives on his own terms. This transformation broadcasts an unspoken message. I am no longer waiting for you. I am the storm you cannot contain. This is where the true psychological shift occurs. She begins to view you through a new lens, not as a familiar face she could ignore, but as a force she can't ignore. The very act of ignoring you becomes her regret, because she sees you thriving, evolving, becoming more than she imagined. Her mind loops endlessly, trying to decode the mystery of your transformation. She becomes obsessed, not with what you say, but with who you have become. Another key aspect of this psychology is the power of non-reactivity. When ignored, most men react emotionally, sending messages, demanding answers, or seeking closure. The godlike man does not react. He responds with silence and calm. This non-reactivity disarms her. It breaks the cycle of emotional tug-of-war. She realizes that her actions have no power over your state. This realization ignites a deep, almost primal intrigue. Why doesn't he chase? Why doesn't he crumble? The answers elude her, but the curiosity consumes her. Non-reactivity also creates emotional scarcity. When you do re-engage, your presence carries weight because it is not freely given. Your words, your time, your attention become precious commodities. This shift elevates your status in her mind from someone available to someone valuable. A prize, not a convenience. In parallel, the godlike man practices radical self-respect. He refuses to settle for crumbs or partial attention. If she ignores him, he doesn't grovel for scraps. He builds an empire of his own worth. This self-respect creates boundaries that she must either respect or lose you entirely. And paradoxically, these boundaries increase her obsession because they highlight your independence and integrity. Finally, the godlike transformation taps into the deeper human need for meaning and narrative. People are wired to seek stories of transformation, redemption, power, and conquest. When you rise from being ghosted to embodying godlike presence, you become the protagonist of a compelling story, a story she can't help but replay in her mind, asking herself how she lost the hero she once had, or never truly had. This narrative fuels her obsession because it's unfinished, unresolved, and charged with emotional tension. From a neurochemical perspective, your absence paired with your transformation activates her brain's reward system in unpredictable ways. The dopamine spikes, the oxytocin dips, and the emotional circuits scramble to recalibrate. This biological storm mirrors the psychological tempest she experiences, a storm you command without uttering a word. The godlike man understands that obsession is a byproduct of his own inner work, not the result of external manipulation. It's born from his refusal to be diminished, his commitment to growth, and his mastery over emotional chaos. This is why no amount of chasing can create obsession, but this kind of transformation can make her need you beyond reason. In this journey from ghosted to godlike, you become an alchemist turning rejection into gold, absence into presence, silence into an undeniable roar. You learn that true power lies not in her attention, but in the sovereign command of your own life, and in that power you become unforgettable. There is a profound irony in the dance of desire and rejection. The very man a woman turns away from often becomes the one she finds herself drawn to again, powerless to resist. This is not mere coincidence or luck. It is a consequence of the invisible forces a man awakens within himself after being ignored. She looked away thinking you would break, fade, or chase endlessly. Instead, you transformed into a force she herself created, a man forged from absence, silence, and unyielding self-mastery. And now watch closely, because that same man who was once dismissed will become the gravitational pull she cannot escape. The first step in this process is understanding the power of creation through absence. When a woman ignores you, she sets into motion a psychological paradox. By withdrawing her presence, she unknowingly gives birth to a version of you that is not only stronger but more alluring than the one she dismissed. She creates the conditions for your transformation, the crucible in which the weak version dies and the unbreakable man emerges. She looks away, but the seeds of your new self have already been planted in the fertile ground of your silence. This silence is not emptiness. It is a signal of your refusal to bend to her whims. It is the sound of you reclaiming your energy, your time, your purpose. While she tests your boundaries with absence, you build them with discipline and relentless focus. In doing so, you become a man shaped by his own standards, not hers. This transformation carries with it a magnetic pull that operates on a subconscious level. She doesn't just miss you. She misses the idea of you, the potential you represent. But more importantly, she begins to sense the power that she helped unleash. The man she created is no longer available for her to take lightly. He is no longer a mirror reflecting her moods, but a lighthouse standing tall through the storm. Psychologically, this creates a tension that she cannot easily resolve. Human beings crave consistency, but they are also drawn to growth and challenge. When you evolve beyond the confines of her indifference, you become the ultimate challenge, a living contradiction of familiarity and mystery. This contradiction is what makes her obsession grow. She is caught between the comfort of the past and the intrigue of the present, pulled in by the man who was once hers but now belongs to himself. At the core of this phenomenon lies a deep truth about desire. It is not fueled by possession, but by loss. When she looked away, she triggered a primal response in herself. Loss activates the brain's reward and pain systems simultaneously, creating a powerful cocktail of longing and regret. This is the very fuel that powers her creeping obsession. She begins to replay moments, words, and unspoken promises, each memory sharpening the ache of what she discarded. Meanwhile, you embody a new standard of self-respect and independence that she cannot ignore. You do not chase, plead, or explain. You simply exist, fully, unapologetically, and beyond her reach. This existence is a mirror reflecting her own uncertainty and desire. She is forced to confront the reality that the man she walked away from is not broken, but reborn. This rebirth is often misunderstood. It is not about changing yourself to fit her expectations, or trying to be someone you're not. It's about becoming, tapping into parts of yourself that were dormant or suppressed while you sought her approval. You reclaim your passions, your ambitions, your freedom. You cultivate your mind, body, and spirit into a whole that commands attention naturally. The process is a powerful demonstration of cause and effect. She caused your silence, your absence, and your transformation. And now that transformation causes her to question her own choice. The dynamic reverses. She is no longer the one who holds the power of attention. You hold the power of presence, which is infinitely more compelling. But what makes this dynamic truly potent is the subtlety of your power. You do not make her crawl back through desperation or manipulation. Instead, you create an irresistible force field around yourself, a blend of confidence, mystery, and self-possession that pulls her in like a tide she cannot resist. She finds herself compelled to reach out, to reconnect, to re-enter the orbit she once abandoned. This return is rarely straightforward. It is often accompanied by confusion, mixed signals, and emotional turbulence. But her obsession grows because she senses that something has shifted irrevocably. The man she ignored is no longer a reflection of her power. He is a monument to his own, and in that, she recognizes something she perhaps never saw before. A man who exists beyond her influence. There is a deep psychological mechanism at work here called projection. She projects onto you her own desires, regrets, and fears. Your transformation becomes a canvas on which she paints the story of what she lost, what she might still have, and what she fears she will never reclaim. This projection intensifies her emotional investment, turning casual curiosity into relentless obsession. At the same time, your silence and independence create a vacuum that she instinctively feels compelled to fill. The human psyche abhors a vacuum, especially when it involves someone once intimately connected. Her mind churns with possibilities, scenarios, and what-ifs. The more you hold your ground, the deeper this mental and emotional pull becomes. This dynamic is also a testament to the power of emotional economy. When you are always available, your value depreciates. But when you become scarce, your value appreciates exponentially. The man she once took for granted now commands premium attention simply because he is not easily accessible. This shift elevates you from option to necessity. Furthermore, your transformation disrupts her internal narrative. She is forced to reconsider her story about you, about herself, and about the relationship. This cognitive dissonance, the clash between what she believed and what she now experiences, intensifies her obsession because the mind seeks resolution. Until she resolves this conflict, she remains emotionally tethered to you. This is the silent power you wield when you become the man she created. You do not need to engage or explain. Your very existence in this new form challenges her perceptions and awakens her desire. She may have looked away, but now, like a moth drawn to a flame, she finds herself crawling back, not as a victor, but as someone captivated by the force you have become.